Hi, everyone. Here are a couple quick remarks about the compare-contrast paper and a few other observations. And these are based on some conversations that I've had with some of you this week about the paper. I do want to emphasize that you'll probably get the most instruction about the paper in the videos in week 13. So please watch those if you have not done so. This is just some additional information. And the first thing I want to start with by saying is that I don't want you to stress about this paper or how to do it. Compare contrast is a strategy that enables you to do things in a variety of different styles. Think about the essays in the chapter from the River Reader that you read. Now, perhaps you only read one essay, but if you did, I'd encourage you to go back and read the others, and you'll see that people can do this in different ways. They can mix the organizational patterns if they choose. They can make this predominantly narrative and storytelling, or they can make it more analytical. And you are free to do whatever you want to with that, as long as you are meeting the two basic requirements of the paper, which are to compare some aspect of Hmong history or culture with some aspect of another history or culture, and preferably your own, but it doesn't even have to be if you don't want to write about your own history or culture. And the paper requires two sources, but those sources can be interviews that you've had with your grandparents. They can be interviews that you've had with people of another culture, and they can be sources that have already been presented in class. So you don't necessarily have to do any research for this paper either, as long as you utilize the sources that you have and cite them. So let's move on then to just a couple overall remarks I want to make about writing, and this is stuff that for the most part you've heard before, but again I want to emphasize the fact that you have lots of choices as you write this paper, and this is what writers do. They make rhetorical choices, and rhetoric is the art of speaking or writing effectively to achieve a particular purpose with a particular audience. In this case, your particular audience is college students, and your purpose is to help them understand something. You can also entertain them too, if you wish. So that's your purpose. And rhetoric, in addition to being a something that involves choices, it also involves employing strategies. And you've learned some strategies already in this class this trimester. So first thing you want to ask is, who's your audience? What do you want to accomplish? You've already got those answers. Second thing you want to ask is, what's the most effective way to do that? Now, in this case, you've been assigned to write an essay, but for future writing, what is the most effective way to reach a particular audience for a particular purpose? And the answer is, it depends. You have choices to make about genres. Are you going to write a memo, a report, an essay? Are you going to draw a meme? Are you going to create a chart? Are you going to write a novel? All of those things are choices that you can use depending on what your purpose is. And then within those choices, you have certain strategies of writing. Do you want to tell stories? In other words, use narrative. Do you want to use description? Do you want to use definition? Do you want to use analysis, classification, compare and contrast? And most often, chances are you'll be using a combination of those, what we call rhetorical strategies. I do want to emphasize one thing, though, and I want to highlight this word story here. Almost anything that you write, whether it is an essay, a cover letter, or a marketing brochure, is going to be benefited by having a story. It may need to be a very short story, but nonetheless, People appreciate stories because they give living examples. So I do hope that you will include stories in your essay in which you compare these cultures. So this is just a repetition of things I've already said. So this is your audience, college students. So what do we need to know about this audience? They want new and novel information. So make sure you're teaching people something they don't know. And often when we're dealing with something like compare and contrast, we deal in a lot of generalities. People may know things already, but they're not going to know the stories that you tell. They're not going to know the specific examples that you can give. And that's what's going to make your essay come alive, even if you feel like you're telling a story everybody knows. Nobody's going to have the same examples or individual stories. So focus on those. And just to review again, your purpose is to help your readers understand and appreciate the two different cultures. So I do suggest that you revisit Chapter 3 and read those essays. Note they don't stick to kind of a formulaic ping pong of compare contrast. You do have leeway as far as talking about certain things in certain ways. And note the heavy emphasis on narrative and description. And with that, we're going to take a look at this Mark Twain essay. I just copied a couple paragraphs of that, and I'm going to read them to you and comment on them. So he begins his compare-contrast writing by saying this. Now, when I had mastered the language of this water, and had come to know every trifling feature that bordered the great river as familiarly as I knew the letters of the alphabet, I had made a valuable acquisition. But I had lost something too. I had lost something which could never be restored to me while I lived. All the grace, the beauty, and the poetry had gone out of the majestic river. What he is comparing here is how he felt after he mastered the language of the river as a riverboat captain, compared to the magic the river held for him before he had mastered that river. So in just this first couple sentences, he's told us what he is comparing, the before and after. And notice he doesn't say things like, in this essay, I will compare how I viewed the river before I became a riverboat captain and how I view the river after I became a riverboat captain. He didn't do that. He did it much more eloquently. And I hope that you will do that too, rather than rely on announcement type introductions. So now we get into what the points of comparison. And really, he's only got one point of comparison in here. It's how he views the river. So here's one passage that shows how he viewed the river before. I still keep in mind a certain wonderful sunset which I witnessed when steamboating was new to me. A broad expanse of the river was turned into blood. In the middle distance, the red-hued brightened into gold, through which a solitary log came floating, black and conspicuous. In one place a long, slanting mark lay sparkling upon the water. Now here he's got an almost identical but opposite passage in which he describes how he felt after becoming a pilot. Then, if that sunset scene had been repeated, I should have looked upon it without rapture, and should have commented upon it inwardly in this fashion. The sun means that we are going to have wind tomorrow. That floating log means that the river is rising. Small thanks to it. That slanting mark on the water refers to a bluff reef which is going to kill somebody's steamboat one of these nights if it keeps on stretching like that. So he's got two separate descriptive passages describing the before and the after. And then finally, towards the end, we have his thesis. No, the romance and the beauty were all gone from the river. All the value any feature of it had for me now was the amount of usefulness it could furnish towards compassing the safe piloting of a steamboat. And then he ends the essay with another line about asking if it was worth it. So that is an example of the way that you could do your essay with that much description and that much narration, with your thesis at the end if you wish. Or you can do it in a more traditional way. But I just threw that in here because I wanted you to see the kind of options you have. And then finally, one last thing I want to say about this essay, and that is that the focus of this essay, if you look at the rubric for this assignment, is measuring sentence skills, grammar, and mechanics, something that we haven't paid a lot of attention to throughout the course because that's not what this course is about. But nonetheless, it's something that is part of the editing process you need to demonstrate your mastery of. And so you will probably want to put more effort into editing this time, perhaps even than you put into writing. So those are my remarks on the paper, and I'd be happy to talk with you individually more if you would find that helpful.